And I'm sitting on a box.
Yeah.
There we are, Mr. James Copeland. He's our honoree for our first stop on the Heartstrings for Heroes, Strings Across America tour. So, how you doing today?
I'm doing okay.
Good.
Doing good now.
And you made a grand entrance with your motorcycle here?
Yeah, you don't want to come into a bike ride doing that.
he drove in and hit a cone, and then I had to save his life and his wife.
Yeah, right on time.
That's what brothers do. So, okay, tell us, back in Vietnam is when you served.
Yeah.
What were the years?
In 1966 and 67.
Right.
I served 12 months in combat with Echo Company, 2nd Battalion, 9th Marine Division. We were on search and destroy missions the majority of the time. So,
right.
A lot of jungle activity and going through villages and stuff. So, sort of a nightmare in the daytime.
Right. It's all right. Yeah. Take your time. Don't worry about it. Just talk like we're talking.
Yeah. Sometimes it gets a little tough getting started, but
yeah.
I served as a machine gunner for the Grunt Company and Marines. Yeah. Yeah. When I first got over there, I thought I was going to destroy the enemy and you know, win the war and come home.
Right.
But I found out real quick that it was not so easy.
Mm-hmm.
Search and destroy missions means they're after you too.
Right.
So combat turned out to be, as any combat, turned out to be a nightmare the whole tour.
Yeah.
We went through quite a bit. I got a first Purple Heart in April. I went over there in June '66.
Okay.
Made it through till April, and I got my first Purple Heart, and managed to make it through the end. My last week in Vietnam. I'd already had my orders in to go home, and a helicopter got shot down in the DMZ area, and we got called out to go get them. Of course, all the soldiers were lost. We didn't even make it to the chopper. We got stopped by too many NBA, and through that battle raging, we just accidentally walked right over the hill. It was dug in. They had 20 bunkers around it, and we didn't know it till we got in the middle of it.
Right.
In their line anyway of bunkers, and then the firefight started. A lot of guys went down during that period of time. I think there was 7 wounded and 4 lost their lives in that battle that morning. I was told it took about 3 hours from start to finish, but I didn't know about it till later.
Right.
I ran out of ammo, and when I ran out, that's when I got shot.
And where did you get shot?
The bullet went, well, what happened was I was standing directly between 2 bunkers.
Right.
And the guy in the bunker on the left, whenever my machine gun stopped firing, he jumped up and shot me straight through my left shoulder. It went inside my chest cavity, between my heart and my backbone, and lodged under my right shoulder blade. So it went all the way through the center mass of my chest. I was unconscious immediately.
Right.
I came to a little while later, but I was sitting in a foxhole when I woke up. And my head was hanging down between my knees, and blood was dripping out of my mouth every time I tried to breathe. I couldn't move. I was just paralyzed from the waist up, so all I could do was just sit there and watch the blood drip on my clothes. And then I passed out again, and when I woke up the second time, there was a guy taping up my shoulder, taping the hole in my back. It was just past my shoulder joint there, and he was taping it up, and I didn't know who he was. And as it happened, about 27 years later, they retired 2nd Battalion, 9th Marine Division, and the guy that was taping up my back saw my name on a roster as a survivor.
Right.
And he called me. He got a hold of me and asked me if that was me. I told him, yeah. And I, of course, asked him who he was, because I didn't even know the man. And he said that whenever he heard me screaming for ammunition from G Company, he went running to me to take machine gun ammo to me. And when he got to me, I was the last one standing. And what it was, all my men were down. A couple of them, their rifles were jammed, and the rest of them were wounded or dead. And he started belting on ammo for me. And I asked him, I said, well, who was the corpsman that was taping up my back? And he said, that wasn't the corpsman. He said, that was me. He said, you didn't know me. He said, I wasn't even with your company. I just happened to get there at that particular time when you needed ammo, and so I ended up being there. He said, do you remember what you asked me? And And I said, no, I just remember staring at you because you were crying. He said, yeah, I was crying. The corpsman told you you'd be dead in a few minutes. He couldn't help you. And you looked at me and asked me for your Bible. And he said, you wouldn't take nothing, you wouldn't take mine. He said, you demanded yours out of your pack. And he said, so I had to go scrambling for it and finally got it. And he said, you got up and walked to the LZ so they could airback you out. And I didn't remember walking except in my nightmares over the years. But
Yeah.
I made it anyway, and got home. But about almost 30 years after I got home from Vietnam, I started preaching. I got through with the drugs and alcohol and tried to straighten up my life and change things because things weren't going so good. I didn't realize I had PTSD so bad and it was affecting my whole surroundings. But I managed to kick both and straighten myself out. Ended up preaching, and a year after I was preaching, that guy called me and told me that he was the one that loaded my machine gun. And I asked him to tell me everything it was all about it, and he explained to me what happened. And then a few years ago, some guys got a hold of me, and they were survivors of that squad that I was with.
Wow.
And they wanted to meet me in Washington, D.C. They all thought I had died. Of course, the way I was hit, they knew I wasn't going to make it to the hospital. But, so I went to D.C. and met them, and they were 4 of the riflemen that was in that squad, and we talked, about it. And they told me what happened was that I kept everybody pinned down while they were moving the wounded and dead back to the LZ. I didn't know how long the battle lasted or what. All I could see was too many soldiers coming up out of the ground everywhere, and I kept trying to pin them down. And every time I swung my gun back around, somebody else was missing. Didn't know where they were going. Didn't know they were down. And I found out though that most of them did survive. And when I met those guys in D.C., it was a good feeling. And they told me I did a decent job because I held the enemy back till they could get the guys back to the corpsman, and then took my bullet and I survived anyway. But they said a lady was going to meet us there in D.C. from California, wanted to meet us, and her baby brother was one of the guys we were trying to get. And when I got to the hotel in D.C., I was sitting in the lounge by myself. I saw a lady sitting in the lounge across a few tables away from me, and I kept staring at her thinking, that's got to be the lady. So I got up, walked over, and I asked her if she knew anything about 2-9, because I didn't want to be too forward, and if it wasn't her, I'd been embarrassed. So I just asked her if she knew anything about 2-9. And she looked up at me and she said, that's why I'm here. So I told her I was the machine gunner that was out there trying to get those men back, and she said that was her baby brother. They had just found his bones 5 years earlier, did a DNA on her, and she wanted to come meet us and see who it was that was trying to get them back. But she did get her brother back home, and I managed to heal a little bit since then, or quite a bit actually. But I'm doing okay now.
Good. Well, I'm glad that we can help in your healing and do this for you tomorrow. And I hope it brings another chapter of healing into your life, because I know that you said that you wanted to learn how to play guitar or continue on with that. So
yeah, I started trying to learn how to play. In fact,
this is his lovely wife. And state your name, sweetheart.
Joyce.
Yeah. And
she found out we just got married 7 months ago now.
Oh wow!
Right?
Awesome.
I told her I was trying to learn how to play the guitar, so she wanted me to play her a song at our wedding.
Oh wow!
And I worked on that song for 3 months, not knowing how to play. But I worked on it. I played it. I got it. We did it.
How did he do?
I sang it.
Did he? That's awesome.
Yeah, she'd say that today. But
she's gonna say that for the camera.
It worked. Yeah, it worked out great though. I managed to play the song for her, and it gives me something to do.
Wow, that's a beautiful story. Yeah. Well, yeah, like I said, we're doing this for 16 cities across the country. You're our first stop and our first soldier that's getting a custom Strings Across America guitar. So it's kind of it's a big thing because you're the first out of the 16. So
really,
yeah.
I was wondering how so many things are happening to me lately. Of course, finding my high school sweetheart and getting married
Wow.
was one great thing, and then this past month I was elected commander of their Purple Heart chapter in my home county.
Wow.
I'm thinking, how did that happen? And then you guys called, and I'm just overwhelmed. I really am. But for this happening to me, it's put my mind a lot on my buddies. In fact, I've been trying to get a hold of Oakland Spence, one of the riflemen that was with me that day. In fact, he held the IV for me while I was on the chopper. I didn't know it till I met him in D.C., but he held the IV bottle up for me, hoping I'd survive to get to the hospital. And I've been trying to reach him to tell him all week, but I hadn't been able to get him on the phone yet.
Yeah.
But those guys and my buddies that fell and didn't make it home, they're the real heroes. You know, not me. I survived and I got a life, you know, and I can move on. But a lot of my buddies didn't make it.
Yeah. I have that conversation with a Marine that lost both legs, and I said, to me, you're one of my heroes. And he goes, Wade, no, the heroes don't come home. Those are the heroes. And I was like, yeah, you could say that, but you know, he's got a point though. You know, I mean, those are the ones that gave it all.
I was very fortunate because I think I know the hand of God saved me and brought me back home. But I've thought so much all these years about why they weren't able to come home too. You know, and every time I saw one fall, it's like when I first got over there, the sergeant over guns company, he told me, he said there's two things you got to remember, Copeland. He said all those guys in this squad out here that you're going to be attached with, their life's in your hands. You got the machine gun, you got the firepower, and they're going to be dependent on you. He said, so don't miss your targets. And I said, okay, Sergeant, you know, I'll do my best. And he started to walk off, and I said, Sergeant, wait a minute. I said, what's the second thing? He said, Copeland, they're not going to be shooting at them. They're going to shoot you first. If you miss your target, you ain't going home. Just don't miss. I thought about that my whole tour over there. And every time we get in a firefight, I knew my guys were dependent on me, you know, and I wanted them to come home with me. But too many of them fell, and can't bring them back. But those guys were the heroes. Oakland told me before that last firefight, they were looking at me when we went out and started across that hill. And I asked him when I met him a few years ago, I said, yo, why were y'all, you know, watching me? He said, because we knew that you knew what was going on, because we were too new. We just got over there. And they followed me, and those guys they were tough. Oakland's tough. He's a good soldier. All of them were. But there's a lot of heroes over there that we don't ever see. And a lot of heroes people don't even know about, you know. And I like what you're doing, not for me, but there's a lot of guys out here, buddy. There's a lot of them.
Yeah.
I'm hearing more and more about them now that I've opened up a little bit and began, you know, going to the Purple Heart chapter and things like that, and talking to different soldiers. I'm learning that there's an awful lot of soldiers out here right now that are heroes, but they're quiet. They're having a whole lot of trouble with PTSD, and a lot more difficult shape than what I'm in. I'm very fortunate that I got help when I did. Doing okay, but I think about those guys every day. I never thought that 12 months of combat would work on a man's mind for the rest of his life. You would think that it would be over and they could quit and go home, but it's something you can't leave behind.
Changes a man.
It changes a man totally. I told my wife, I was trying to explain to her so she'd know what was going on with me. I told her it's like the Jimmy Copeland that she knew went to Vietnam, but Lance Corporal James Copeland came home, and Jimmy hadn't been able to come home yet, but I'm beginning to come home now.
Jimmy's coming home.
Jimmy's coming home.
That's beautiful. Wow. All right. Well, on that note, that's a perfect way to end this. I just want to thank you for, you know, and you did come into this for a reason. You came into our line of the whole thing for a reason, and you know, I just can't thank you enough for opening up, because I know how hard it is. As a matter of fact, I was just talking to a guy half an hour before you. He was in Vietnam, and I asked him earlier in the day, because we went to Hooters together to meet with that ride stop, and he said he'd give me an interview. Well, half an hour ago, he just changed his mind. He says, no, I can't do it. So there are people like that. Yep. And the fact that you're opening up is going to help a lot of other people, especially when they see this. So you're doing
If you had asked me 7 years ago, I couldn't have told you what I told you today.
Right. And what made you start talking? What was the pivotal point when you opened up? You said, I have to start talking. What was?
Yeah. Well, when I came home from Vietnam, I couldn't read newspapers, and I could not watch television. Too many things would cause me to have panic attacks,
right,
and relive too much stuff over again. So I stayed away from all of that. And a few years ago, well, I guess about when Army Wives came on television, I don't remember when it was, but my wife at the time, she passed away now a few years ago, but she wanted me to watch Army Wives, and I never watched anything like that before, and I told her, I can't do it, I just can't. So she begged me to watch it, and so finally I gave in and sat down to watch Army Wives, and this car pulled up at a house, and people in the backyard were having a barbecue, and two soldiers get out. The whole family looks at the car and the two soldiers, and I knew what it was. Somebody fell in action, and they were coming to tell the family, and I fell apart. Just totally fell apart. And so I called a friend that I had met a few years ago, before that, and he was a lieutenant colonel. And I called him up, and I said, Eustace, I said, I got a problem, man. I can't watch Army Wives. And he contacted the Purple Heart Association in Columbia, South Carolina, and told them to get me some help. And they called me, and a very nice lady was in charge of that, and I went to see her and talked to her, and they set me up with appointments. And I went to see the psychiatrist then on a regular basis for a few years after that. And the more I went to them, the more they pulled out of me about what actually happened, and different things cause it. And I had so many things that had worked on my mind, but talking about it to them, and they told me to try to share it with other people as well, to just open up and say those things to get it out. And so I started trying to do that, and I began to realize that it does help. When I had first got over there, one of the things that really bothered me, I was a young Christian man, wondering if I was going to be a preacher one day or a missionary or what, and I ended up in the Marine Corps. And one of the firefights we got in, I had already killed a few people. And battle's battle, you know, it's on the combat field, and you know, you don't think about it, you just do it. And we were going through this fairly dense jungle area, and I just happened to have my machine gun pointed at this one area as I was walking, and they started shooting at us from there, and I immediately unloaded that machine gun right at that spot, and we got in there, two of them, and there was 3 soldiers down on the ground, and 2 of them were dead, and they rolled one of them over, and I had my machine gun right in his face when they flipped him over, and the guy looked at me, and he wasn't dead yet. His eyes met mine, and we stared at each other, and all I could see was a soldier, but he looked like a 12-year-old kid to me. And he had oddly enough, he had a beautiful olive complexion. Looked like a little child. Big brown eyes, and I could tell by the look in his face he didn't want to die. And he knew I was the one that shot him. And I knew I just killed this kid. He was a soldier, but
yeah,
at that moment it didn't matter. And when I watched the life drain out that soldier's eyes, it did something to me inside. And that's what began my PTSD. Was I had sent that kid to hell, is what I was thinking.
Yeah.
And I didn't take any more pictures of Vietnam. I sent no more souvenirs home. All I had was dark skies and miserable nights. I did my job, but I did not think about anything anymore. I blocked everything out of my mind. I blocked so much out of my mind I could not remember any of the guys in my squad that died or were wounded. I could no longer remember their names. And I've struggled with that my whole life because I can't remember. The 4 guys I met in D.C., I met them and I told them I could not remember anybody. And I blocked so much out, and that's what I was doing for 30 years after I came home. I had tried to block it out, and things that tried to remind me of it, I couldn't stand the thought of it to remember. I didn't want to remember none of that stuff because it hurt too bad. And watching your own men being blown up, and one burned up with his entire body burned up with phosphorus, napalm.
Wow.
Those flashbacks come at you, and with me, the soldier that I looked at that day, and I didn't want him to die, but I knew I had to kill him. I mean, that's what I was there for, you know.
Right.
And seeing what they were doing to me, I realized that. So it's turmoil inside my own mind. But the feelings I had about what I was doing, yet the feelings of my own men and watching them get blown apart, trying to save them. And there's a whole lot of guys out there worse than I am with it. And so talking about it does help.
Yeah.
I'll feel better when I leave here. Right now I'm a little nervous,
Yeah.
a little upset, but
yeah.
I'll feel better when I walk out of here.
Well, absolutely. I believe that too. Yeah. I mean, it's getting things off your chest is it's hard. You know, there's a lot of things that I haven't been through half of what you've been through, but there's certain things I don't like to talk about either. You know, my past. I was a big drinker up until 9 years ago. You know,
Yeah.
and then. My body shut down. I had grand mal seizures. I stopped breathing. My heart stopped. And lucky my wife at the time brought me back to life. And they rushed me to the hospital. And I spent 3 days detoxing. And when I came out of the hospital, I was a different person.
Yeah.
Literally. And just from there, I said, I'll never touch another drop. And I just made every move to change my life completely from what I used to be.
Yeah.
So I get the drinking, I get the blocking out, drowning the feelings, and I get that part of it.
Yeah.
You know, so. But I don't want to torture you anymore. But that was incredible. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you.
Thank you for being so patient and being part of this. But that's cool. Shut it off.